They handed everything to my brother, right in front of me. My dad didn't even hesitate. You were always too soft, Leah. A dreamer, not a doer. I sat there, frozen, while my mom looked away and my brother smiled like he already owned the world. But then the lawyer cleared his throat and said, "Actually, there's something you should hear." That moment changed everything. I'm Leah, and this is the story of how the woman they underestimated became the one they couldn't ignore. What would you have done in my place? Walked away or stayed to fight? I'd love to hear what you think. I hadn't seen my family in almost 4 years. Walking into the Prescott Villa that night, I told myself to breathe, to stay calm, to smile if I had to. I expected a cold dinner, awkward small talk, maybe a few passive-aggressive comments about why I'd left the family business. What I didn't expect was for my father to destroy me in front of everyone. The dining room looked the same, polished oak floors, fireplace lit just enough to be dramatic. The long table where Grandma Helen used to play chess with me now bore only tension and polished silverware. It smelled like rosemary lamb and distrust. Douglas sat at the head, back straight, voice sharper than the steak knives beside him. "Glad you could make time, Leah," he said, not quite smiling. My mother, Margot, gave a brief nod, adjusting the sapphire pendant she always wore when she needed to feel in control. Ethan, of course, was already seated, jacket perfectly pressed, tapping his fingers lightly on the edge of his plate. We talked. Sort of. My father asked if I was still saving the world for free. Ethan laughed under his breath. I gave a neutral smile, cutting into the overcooked carrots on my plate like they might rescue me. Then, halfway through dessert, Douglas set down his fork and reached for an envelope. "Let's get to it," he said. "We've decided to finalize the transition." Ethan straightened in his seat. My stomach tightened. My mother stared at the table. "The villa," Douglas said, sliding the envelope toward Ethan. "The company, the offshore accounts. It's time your brother takes the lead." My hands froze mid-air. The room felt like it tilted. Ethan looked down at the envelope, then at me. Not quite smug, just rehearsed. I forced my voice to stay even. "I wasn't aware this was a business meeting." Douglas didn't look at me. "You were never part of the plan." I blinked. "Excuse me?" "You walked away, Leah. You chose purpose over profit. You chose strangers over family." He gestured dismissively. "And you expect a piece of this?" My mother didn't speak. She never did when it mattered. She just gripped her necklace a little tighter. "You always were a dreamer," Douglas added. "Too soft, too idealistic. No backbone for the real world." The air thickened. I felt 12 years old again, trying not to cry over a lost chess game with Grandma, while Douglas told me winning was the only thing that mattered. Ethan reached for the envelope. His fingertips brushed it, ready to claim it all. Then Mr. Rhodes, silent until now, cleared his throat. He sat upright, eyes flicking toward my father. "There's a clause," he said evenly, "in Helen Rosewood's estate. It must be read before any signatures are made." My breath caught. My grandmother? She'd been gone for years. What could she possibly have left that might still matter now? My grandmother never raised her voice. She didn't have to. When she was in a room, people listened. And even now, years after her passing, it was her silence that thundered through the air. Mr. Rhodes reached into his briefcase and withdrew a thin, weathered envelope. His movements were deliberate, careful, like he understood exactly what he was about to unearth. "This document," he said, "was signed and notarized in September 2015 during Ms. Helen Rosewood's final revision of her estate. The only sound was the slow creak of the leather folder opening. Somewhere behind me, the logs in the fireplace settled with a muted thump. My father stared, unblinking. Ethan leaned forward. My mother sat frozen, her hand twisting the sapphire ring on her finger, just like she had the day we buried Grandma. Mr. Rhodes unfolded the document. His voice was calm but edged with finality. in the event that my granddaughter, Leah Prescott, is deemed unworthy by her father and removed from any claim to the family business or property, I hereby grant her full authority over my share in Prescott Ventures." I felt my pulse in my throat. Mr. Rhodes continued reading line by line. The clause transferred Helen's controlling shares, her voting power, her influence, everything, to me. No loopholes, no debate. Douglas shifted in his chair. "This is absurd," he snapped. "She left. She abandoned the company. The family I spoke before I realized I was doing it. I didn't abandon anyone. I found purpose outside of profit." Ethan scoffed. "You ran away. My mother didn't look at me. She just stared at the tablecloth like it held the answer to something she couldn't face. This is nonsense," Douglas barked. "Helen never said anything about this." "She wasn't obligated to," Mr. Rhodes replied. "Her shares were legally hers to assign, and she did so, without need for your approval." Douglas's jaw clenched. Ethan's fingers twitched beside the untouched envelope. I tried to steady my breathing. In my memory, I saw Helen's wrinkled hands handing me a small brass compass one afternoon. She'd smiled, that soft, knowing smile of hers. "Still waters lead best," she'd said. I hadn't understood it then. I did now. Mr. Rhodes looked straight at my father. "Effective immediately," he said. "Leah Prescott holds majority voting rights for Prescott Ventures. This amendment supersedes all other arrangements discussed tonight." The words didn't echo, but they didn't need to. My father's chair creaked as he shifted again. My mother exhaled, barely audible. Ethan blinked rapidly, like his eyes were trying to reset what they were seeing. No one moved. The room felt smaller somehow, the fire quieter, the air too dense. Then Ethan turned to me. His gaze was hard, searching for something, weakness, regret, anything. I met his eyes. And for the first time, I didn't look away. They didn't have to say it. The way they looked at me said enough. A new face in an old building, and worse, one they didn't want. The lobby at Prescott Ventures gleamed like a showroom. Glass walls, gray furniture, artificial plants, everything sharp and neutral, as if warmth had been deemed unprofessional. The receptionist didn't make eye contact as she buzzed me in. When I introduced myself to the HR assistant, she blinked once and said, "You're early," like it was a flaw. The office smelled faintly of printer toner and coffee that had been left on the burner too long. Every footstep echoed. Ethan appeared just as I reached my new office. He smiled, too wide. In his hands was a manila folder. "Figured I'd get you started," he said, placing it on my desk. "It's the transition folder. Might be a bit outdated, but it's what we have." Outdated was generous. The materials inside looked like they'd been printed when I was still in graduate school. I thanked him anyway. He left with a nod, but not before glancing around the room like he was taking inventory of what I didn't know. I spent the next hour organizing, noting who stopped by and who didn't. A few glanced through the glass, quickly looking away when I caught their eyes. Around noon, I wandered into the break room. The air felt even staler there, as if no one stayed longer than they had to. The moment I stepped in, a junior associate mumbled something and left. Only one person remained. She stood near the sink, wiping down a counter that didn't need wiping. Mid-50s, kind eyes. She noticed me and smiled gently. "I'm Maribel," she said, "building services." "Leah," I replied, and suddenly felt unsure whether to extend a hand or not. She didn't seem to mind. Without asking, she poured hot water into a mug and dropped in a ginger tea bag. "I thought you could use this," she said. "You look like you've been swallowing nails all morning." I laughed, surprised by how much I needed it. "In this place," she said, setting the mug down, "being polite is currency, but kindness is rare. Don't let them fool you." I nodded slowly. "Thank you." Back in my office, I opened the folder Ethan had given me. The first few documents were nothing more than org charts and outdated policy memos, but the supplier files caught my eye. 3 contracts, all tied to a shell company with a vague name, Sunfield Holdings. A quick search turned up almost nothing, but the registration listed one familiar name, Caleb Dorsey, Ethan's college roommate. My stomach turned. It wasn't proof, but it was a thread, and I had just started pulling. I heard a single knock, then the door opened before I could answer. Ethan stepped in with that same practiced smile. "Let's talk," he said. And this time, I knew it wasn't a request. It wasn't the headlines that hurt. It was how fast people believed them. I woke to a dozen missed calls and a wall of email alerts. The subject lines all bled together. CEO embroiled in fraud, Prescott Ventures under fire, legacy heiress accused of theft. Most linked to the same article, published just after midnight, claiming I had siphoned funds from a nonprofit during my years abroad. There was no source, no hard proof, just innuendo and anonymous quotes. But in this world, perception didn't wait for truth. By the time I arrived at the office, the tension had already settled like fog. People walked faster past my door. Conversation stopped when I entered a room. I caught a senior manager muttering to someone in the hallway, "I knew she was too soft for this." The PR assistant wouldn't meet my eyes when she handed me a press summary. One of the board members called a meeting within the hour. I wasn't even invited, just copied on a follow-up memo. Ethan appeared in my doorway around 10, coffee in hand, unbothered. "Rough morning?" he asked lightly. I didn't answer. He stepped in, closed the door halfway. These things have a way of snowballing. Best thing might be to take a step back. Let it blow over. "And let you step in?" He smiled. "It's not about me, it's about optics. Optics you created." He raised both hands like he had nothing to do with any of it. "Hey, you always said you cared about the mission more than the spotlight. Maybe now's the time to prove that." He left without waiting for a response. By evening, the building had emptied. Even the PR assistant had packed up early. The only light came from the desk lamp and the faint flicker of the emergency exit sign. I sat on the couch in my office, staring out the window, the city blurred behind rain-streaked glass. My shoulders ached. I hadn't eaten since morning. My phone kept vibrating, but I didn't check it. I was too tired to spin, too raw to fight. Somewhere in the quiet, I heard a door open, then a soft knock. Maribel stepped in, holding a mug. "I figured you'd still be here," she said, setting it down beside me. "Why?" I whispered. "Because you look like her," she said simply. "Like Helen. When things went wrong, she didn't leave either." She sat down across from me. No questions, no pity. "I didn't do what they're saying," I murmured. "I know." I looked at her, unsure what gave her that certainty. She shrugged. "They never brought anyone tea when they cried here. You're already changing that." For a moment, I didn't speak. The heat from the mug seeped into my hands. I didn't cry. I didn't vent. I just breathed. "In this life," Maribel said quietly, "rough days can weigh you down. But there's always room for grace if we remember to care for each other." I nodded. Then she stood and left me alone with the sound of the rain. When the silence settled again, I reached into my drawer. The USB drive I'd found 2 days ago in Ethan's transition folder glinted in the lamplight. My fingers closed around it, steady now. Not from fear, from clarity. You can't lead with a clenched fist, but you can fight with an open hand. The boardroom felt colder than usual, despite the hum of the overhead lights. Every chair was filled, every face stern. Phones rested face down on the polished table, though I knew they'd buzz the moment someone stepped out. The air crackled with unspoken doubt. I felt it before anyone spoke, thick, measured, watchful. Mr. Halpern, one of the senior board members, cleared his throat. "We've called this meeting to address the recent press storm. As of this morning, over a dozen outlets have picked up the story." Another member added, "There are serious concerns about your past affiliations and how they reflect on this company." I looked down at the legal pad in front of me. Blank. I hadn't needed to write anything. I already knew what needed to be said. I understand your concern, I said quietly, but I think we've all been looking at the wrong story. Ethan sat 2 seats to my left, arms folded. His expression was perfectly neutral, polished even, but his fingers tapped the underside of the table. I stood and walked toward the projector screen. Last night, I began, I reviewed financial documents tied to supplier accounts going back 3 years, inconsistent invoices, duplicate payments, shell company trails. The screen lit up behind me. Audit logs appeared, then transactional screenshots. This is Sunfield Holdings, I said, registered under a man named Caleb Dorsey, Ethan's college roommate. Ethan leaned forward. That's a coincidence. You can't prove intent. I clicked again. Time-stamped footage played, Ethan entering a restricted office after hours, plugging in a USB. I didn't say a word as the silence thickened. When it ended, I turned to face them. I didn't come here to destroy my brother, I said, but I won't let what he did destroy this company. Mr. Rhodes leaned back, arms crossed. Do you intend to press charges? I shook my head. Number this is about repair, not revenge. He'll be suspended pending full review, but what matters more is how we lead from here. The room was still. I could feel the shift, not dramatic, not loud, just decisive. Then Mr. Rhodes looked around. Motion to confirm Ms. Prescott as CEO? No one spoke, but one by one heads nodded, not just with compliance, but with something closer to belief. The meeting ended quietly. No applause, no grand statements. As people stood to leave, Margot hesitated by her chair. Then, without looking directly at me, she walked over. Her voice was low, almost carried away by the hum of the lights. You have her eyes, she said. I just never knew they saw this far. She didn't wait for a reply, just kept walking. I sat back down, alone now, the screen behind me fading to black. Helen once wrote, "One day you'll need to stand in a room full of people who doubt you and still speak." She was right, and I had. Victory didn't feel like fireworks. It felt like exhaling after years of holding my breath. The office looked different in the spring light. The harsh gray walls now held framed photos, teams laughing, small moments frozen in time. Someone had brought in a pothos plant that climbed the corner near the copy machine. Even the coffee didn't taste burned anymore. I spent most mornings walking through the halls without a clipboard, without a schedule, just walking, listening, learning. People no longer avoided my gaze. They greeted me. Some smiled. A few even asked how I was sleeping. One afternoon, an envelope arrived. No return address, just my name, handwritten in blocky letters I hadn't seen in years. It was from Ethan. No apology. Just a single page of blunt honesty. I don't expect anything, he'd written. Maybe I hated you because you reminded me of everything I buried. I wanted to be seen. You already were. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just folded the letter and placed it in the drawer of my desk, next to a brass compass I hadn't touched in months. That same afternoon, I reached for that drawer again. Tucked behind a stack of old contracts, I found something I hadn't noticed before. A folded piece of cream-colored paper wrapped with a ribbon I recognized immediately. My name, written in my grandmother's hand. I sat down and read slowly. You don't need to be loud. You just need to be steady. Let others shout. Let them chase. You already carry what matters. The ink had faded slightly at the edges, but the words cut clean. Later that week, the nonprofit I once worked for received a 7-figure donation, anonymous but not hard to trace. The wire came through an account my father once controlled. No message, no call, just a line in the ledger, like a whisper. A few days after that, he visited. He stood in the doorway of my office, unsure, no longer commanding, just present. I had to see it, he said. To see what? That you didn't tear it all down. I nodded once. And? He didn't answer. But before leaving, he glanced at the wall where I'd hung a photo of Helen, smiling, sleeves rolled up, hands stained with potting soil. He didn't say her name. He didn't need to. After he left, I placed the compass beside her photo, and for the first time, I felt exactly where I needed to be. The whispers didn't stop because they feared me. They stopped because they finally saw me. Looking at that old compass beside her photo, I didn't feel powerful. I just felt peaceful, like I'd finally come home, not to a place, but to myself. Sometimes, strength isn't in raising your voice or proving someone wrong. It's in holding steady, choosing kindness, and staying true when no one else believes in you. Family doesn't always come with fairness, but grace has a way of making its way back, quietly, like spring after a long winter. If this story reminded you of your own journey or someone you love, I'd be honored to hear what part stayed with you. Let's keep the conversation going, because healing often starts with being heard.